The first time Mariette stepped onto the cracked, sun-bleached porch of the Delacroix plantation, the air itself seemed to recoil. Her skirts brushed the rotting floorboards, and every footstep carried the faint metallic scent of iron. Like blood long dried, she smiled at the family with a warmth that never reached her eyes. And they, hungry for talent to run their kitchens, accepted her without question. The day Mariette arrived at the Delacroix plantation, a thick haze clung to the moss-draped oaks curling around the wide, sagging porches as though the land itself hesitated to welcome her. She appeared on the dirt road, like a shadow stitched from the edges of the mist, her skirts brushing the ground in slow, deliberate folds. There was a quiet insistence in the way she moved, a rhythm that seemed measured not by time, but by something older and stranger. The carriage that had brought her rattled over the worn planks of the plantation bridge. Yet the air remained unnaturally still, the horses' snorts sounding sharp against the hush that had settled over the estate. The Delacroix family, expecting a competent cook to ease their burdens, were immediately struck by a subtle wrongness about her. She smiled, but it was a smile that carried no warmth. It was sharp at the edges, polished, and it lingered in their minds after she turned away. Her hands, delicate and pale, seemed too long, too precise, and when she brushed against the rail of the porch, it creaked under her touch with a sound that echoed far too long for a simple old board. She carried with her an assortment of knotted baskets and strange, wrapped bundles, the contents of which the family dared not question. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft yet carried a weight that made the air feel heavier. She introduced herself with perfect politeness, but there was a cadence to her words, a subtle pull in the way she enunciated vowels and consonants, as though each syllable carried a hidden current meant to guide or unsettle the listener. The children, usually restless and unruly, fell silent in her presence, and the family matriarch, though proud and confident, felt a sudden, inexplicable chill settle in her chest. She spoke little of her past, offering only hints of places far from Louisiana, of traditions and practices that sounded quaint at first, but lingered in the mind like the last note of a mournful song. Her eyes, dark and unwavering, seemed to look through walls and doors, into spaces the living were not meant to perceive. And when they met those of the Delacroix, there was a brief, electric pause that left the skin tingling long after she had turned away. By the time she unpacked her things and set her kitchen corner in order, there was a palpable tension in the household, a mixture of curiosity, fear, and fascination. Mariette had arrived not as a guest, not merely as a servant, but as a presence that claimed the space around her, bending the familiar lines of the plantation into something subtly foreign and quietly menacing. And though none could yet articulate it, the first tremors of unease had begun to ripple through the family, unnoticed but unstoppable. The first meal Mariette prepared for the Delacroix family arrived with the soft clatter of fine china, the smell of roasting herbs and spices curling through the air like smoke that refused to dissipate. At first glance, it appeared ordinary, tender cuts of meat, golden crusts, and sauces that shimmered with a warmth that invited hunger. The family, eager to judge her skills, leaned forward with cautious anticipation, praising the aromas, unaware that each bite carried a hidden weight. Mariette herself stood at the stove, humming softly, a tune that none of them recognized, but that seemed to resonate in the very bones of the house. Her hands moved with precise grace, sprinkling seasonings in patterns that the untrained eye could not discern, stirring in circles and arcs that might have been invisible sigils if one looked closely enough. The first forkful was exquisite, the flavors layered and intoxicating, and the Delacroix exchanged impressed glances. Yet as the meal progressed, subtle changes began to creep into the room. A faint, sour tang lingered on the tongue, despite the sweetness of the sauces, and an almost imperceptible heaviness pressed on the chest, as though invisible hands weighed them down. The youngest child whimpered, clutching his stomach, but the adults dismissed it as nerves or the excitement of a new arrival. By the time the meal was finished, a strange malaise had settled across the table, a quiet unease that made the polished wood of the dining table feel slick under their fingers. Hours later, the family awoke one by one, drenched in sweat and trembling, as the first waves of nausea gripped them. Whispered voices seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, soft but insistent, murmuring words they could almost, but not quite, understand. The stomach cramps intensified, twisting as if something unseen churned within them, and a bitter, metallic taste lingered on their tongues that no water could wash away. The family patriarch, who had prided himself on his fortitude, stumbled to the window and pressed a hand against the glass, feeling a coldness that was not from the night air, but from some hidden source within the house. Even the servants, long accustomed to hardship and illness, recoiled, exchanging nervous glances and clutching amulets they kept for protection against spirits and misfortune. By morning, it was clear that this meal had left more than fullness in its wake. The air of the house had changed. It hung heavier, thicker, with the scent of herbs now mingled with something darker, something decomposing just beyond the senses. The family felt their strength ebbing, their minds clouding, and an unspoken dread began to seep into every corner, threading itself through every shadow. Mariette moved among them as if nothing had happened, slicing bread, arranging bowls, humming her same impossible tune. But her eyes glimmered with something that the family could not name, and as they looked at her, a tremor of recognition passed through them. This was no ordinary cook, and this was no ordinary meal after the first cursed meal. The decline of the Delacroix family began subtly, almost imperceptibly, like the slow rot of wood hidden beneath the walls. At first, it was small things. The matriarch's once bright eyes dulled to a gray haze. The patriarch's steady hands trembled while pouring his morning coffee, and the children, normally boisterous and restless, became listless, speaking in hushed tones and moving through the halls as if carrying invisible burdens. Nights grew worse than the days, with each family member plagued by fevered dreams in which shadows twisted and writhed, whispering threats in languages they could not understand but instinctively feared. The household servants, though wary from the first night, began to notice marks appearing on the skin of the Delacroix. Purple, splotchy bruises that seemed to pulse beneath the surface, as if something within the flesh fought to rise. Mariette moved through the house with unhurried precision, her presence as constant and inevitable as the sun rising, yet carrying none of its warmth. She prepared meals with an artistry that beguiled the senses, each dish more exquisite than the last, yet each bite brought with it a creeping illness, a knowing that burrowed deeper with every morsel. The family grew gaunt and pale, their hair thinning, their nails splitting, their voices carrying an odd rasp that made the once proud house echo with eerie sounds like the settling of coffins. Friends and neighbors, summoned to inquire about their well-being, found themselves inching away, muttering about the smell that clung to the estate, the mingling of spices and decay, sweetness and rot. No remedy, no amount of medicine or prayers seemed to slow the progression. Tonics fermented in the kitchen turned sour, herbs wilted before they could be brewed, and even the most persistent servants fell ill after attempting to assist the family. The house itself seemed complicit, as if every floorboard and shutter amplified the sickness, trapping it within the walls, spreading it from one member to another with a cruelty invisible to the eye. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, pooling in corners, crawling across walls as if alive, and when the wind stirred the curtains, the shapes behind them seemed to linger too long, forming figures that vanished when approached, but left a lingering chill in their wake. As the days turned to weeks, the family's decline became grotesque and undeniable. Their flesh seemed to carry an otherworldly pallor, their eyes hollow, their laughter dry and brittle. Mariette continued her work in the kitchen, a faint smile curving her lips, humming her same unearthly tune. No one dared confront her. Each attempt to speak truth seemed to falter, the words sticking in throats, as if swallowed by something unseen. Every meal was consumed with trembling hands, every bite taken in fear, yet they could not stop. And every night, the decay crept further inward, claiming body and mind alike, until the house itself breathed with the slow, relentless pulse of a family rotting from the inside. As the Delacroix family sank deeper into the strange afflictions that gnawed at their bodies and minds. It was the eldest child, Lucien, who first began to notice patterns in the decay. While the adults were consumed by fever and the younger siblings languished in whispered nightmares, he roamed the house in search of answers, eyes sharp and hands trembling. He began in the kitchen, where Mariette worked with an almost ritualistic precision, her movements so measured they seemed carved from the air itself. He watched her, pretending to busy himself with chores, and noted the subtle gestures she made. The tracing of symbols into the flour, the sprinkling of herbs in spirals, too exact to be accidental. There was a rhythm to her work, a cadence that pulsed beneath the ordinary hum of cooking, and with each dish, he felt a creeping dread press into his chest, a certainty that each meal carried more than nourishment. One evening, after Mariette retired to her small room at the back of the house, Lucien crept toward the corner she had designated as her sanctuary. There, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, he found a bundle bound with blackened cords. Inside was a grimoire, its pages thick with age, handwritten in a language that twisted the eye and the mind to read. The ink was dark and fragrant with an aroma that made his stomach churn, yet he could not stop turning the pages. Diagrams of grotesque figures, rituals of binding and decay, instructions for infusing food with curses, and the invocations of spirits that lived between worlds, all revealed themselves under his wide, horrified eyes. He realized, with a sickening certainty, that Mariette had been performing these rituals for every meal, embedding the essence of rot and corruption into the very flesh of their sustenance. The deeper he read, the more he understood that the curse was not merely physical but spiritual. The house itself seemed to respond to the knowledge, the air growing thick and damp, the walls contracting as though listening. Shadows coiled in corners with an awareness that made his skin prickle, and whispers threaded through the floorboards in voices that sounded like distant screams. The grimoire hinted at a path to undoing the enchantments, but the instructions were dangerous and incomplete, requiring acts that defied reason and risked madness. Lucien's pulse raced. He knew that confronting Mariette would be perilous, for she was no ordinary cook, but a vessel of powers older than the plantation itself, and the slightest misstep could bind him to the same creeping decay that had claimed his family. He spent nights poring over the text, memorizing symbols and chants, mapping the layout of the house in his mind to understand the flow of her magic. Each discovery brought a mixture of fear and determination, for he realized that knowledge was both a weapon and a burden. The house no longer felt like home. It was a labyrinth of shadows, a cage in which the curse had begun to entrench itself, waiting for him to make a choice that would either save what remained of the family or doom them utterly, and he understood that the moment to act was approaching faster than he dared. The night Lucien finally decided to confront Mariette. The house itself seemed to hold its breath. Every shutter rattled without wind, every floorboard groaned under his tentative steps, and the shadows in the corners twisted as if aware of the moment to come. In the dim glow of candlelight, he carried the grimoire close to his chest, feeling its weight not just in his hands, but in the very marrow of his bones. The chanting he had memorized pressed against his lips like a fevered prayer, an invocation he hoped could undo what had been wrought. Though he understood that the slightest misstep might unleash a horror far beyond comprehension. As he approached the kitchen, the faint smell of rot and sweet herbs mingled in the air, curling like smoke around his senses, making his stomach twist and his head swim. Mariette stood over the stove, her back straight, her hands moving in the same hypnotic arcs she had practiced every day, stirring something that seemed to shimmer unnaturally, pulsing with a light that was not light. When she finally turned, her eyes locked onto his, and the air between them thickened as if it were solid. Her smile was slow, deliberate, and it did not reach the shadowed depths of her gaze. "You've been curious," she said softly, her voice like silk drawn over steel. "But some things are not meant to be undone." Her words resonated in the walls, bouncing back in echoes that made the candles flicker violently, casting grotesque, dancing shapes across the room. Lucien raised the grimoire, voice shaking as he began the incantation, feeling a surge of heat and cold rip through the kitchen as the words left him. Shadows writhed along the walls, pulling at him and the floorboards beneath, tugging at his mind with whispers of doubt and despair. Mariette laughed then, a sound that seemed to split the air, and suddenly the very essence of the house responded. Tables twisted, pots rattled. The scent of decay thickened into something almost visible, and the air pressed down on him as though the house itself had become a living thing determined to keep its secrets. He forced the words through, trembling but unyielding, and the room convulsed with a rhythm not of this world. Mariette's form began to shimmer, folding and folding into something darker, more vast, as if her presence had never been just flesh and bone. In that instant, Lucien glimpsed the full horror of what had been done, the family's decline, the meals that had carried rot, the house itself infused with a malevolent awareness, all intertwined in a tapestry of curse and corruption that could not be fully unraveled. The candlelight danced along her form, revealing glimpses of eyes in the walls, the floors, and the ceiling, watching, waiting, judging, and he understood with a shiver that the confrontation was only the beginning, and what he thought was a battle to save his family might instead be the threshold into a darkness that would never let him, or anyone, leave.